You're standing inside the most ambitious construction project of the New Kingdom in 1290 BC, and 7 of the most important rooms in Egyptian religion are being built simultaneously 30 meters from where you are. The building has been under construction for 5 years. The inner sanctuaries, 7 parallel chapels, each dedicated to a different deity, each requiring its own complete program of carved and painted reliefs, each with its own false door and its own ritual cycle, are being completed from south to north. The southernmost chapels are sealed and finished. The northernmost are still raw stone. You're standing in the transition, where dried pigment meets fresh dust, where finished walls end and uncut limestone begins, where the sound of fine chisels working relief carving is replaced by the heavier sound of rough quarrying. The workforce here is organised in shifts the way the pyramid workforce was organised, teams with specific names and tasks tracked in administrative records, fed from royal granaries, housed in a workers' village to the south of the complex. The scale is different from the pyramid era. This is not a project of mass labour. It is a project of concentrated skill. Fewer men, more time, a higher proportion of specialised craftsmen, relief cutters who spend years learning a single vocabulary of gesture and proportion, painters who mix their pigments fresh each morning because dried paint behaves differently from fresh paint against porous limestone. This is the Temple of Seti I at Abydos. When it is finished, it will be the finest painted building in the ancient world. It will also contain, in the northwest wing, one of the most consequential pieces of historical fiction ever inscribed in stone. The scribes working in that wing are finishing it today. Walk inside. You know Ramesses the Great. You know the face on the colossi at Abu Simbel. You know the 66 years, the Battle of Kadesh, the treaty with the Hittites. If you have ever encountered the word Ozymandias, the poem about the fallen statue in the desert, the king who commanded future travellers to look on his works in despair, that is Ramesses II. He is the pharaoh the ancient world could not stop building monuments to, the one whose mummy, when it travelled to France for conservation in 1976, was issued a modern Egyptian passport listing his occupation as king. The boy walking through this construction site today is approximately 12 years old. His name is Ramesses. He is the heir Seti I has publicly designated, depicted in the very inscription being completed in the northwest wing, performing the ritual of the ancestors alongside his father. He is watching the artists work. He is watching the scribes prepare the wall. He is watching his father manage 7 simultaneous building projects, military campaigns in 2 directions, diplomatic pressure from the Hittites, and the ongoing ideological work of making the Amarna period officially non-existent. He is learning, in this building, in 1290 BC, what history is and how it is made. He will spend his own reign building over almost everything his father built, and replacing it with something larger. He will claim credit for military victories that were draws. He will commission statues of himself on a scale that makes the Colossi at Karnak look modest. He will inscribe his name on monuments his father and grandfather built, and he will do all of this with the complete confidence of a man who grew up watching the official record be constructed from scratch, who knows from personal observation that history is not discovered but built, one cartouche at a time. Keep that. We'll come back to it. Walk through the entrance pylon and stop. The smell is 2 things at once. From the construction side, the north wing still being quarried, limestone dust, the white mineral cloud that fine copper tools produce on newer stone, dry and faintly chalky on the lip, and from the inner chapels, already complete and being painted, pigment. Not finished paint, but fresh. Gum arabic still drying, mineral pigments suspended in it releasing a warm, slightly organic breath. Lapis lazuli ground from Afghan stone for the backgrounds, malachite for green, red ochre for skin, carbon black for outline. Each pigment has its own character. Together, in enclosed limestone, in Upper Egyptian summer heat, they produce something that exists nowhere else, from somewhere. Behind you, the Nile, faint at this distance. Abydos sits 10 kilometers from the river, at the edge where cultivation ends and desert begins. But a canal ran from here to the Nile, the same route funeral barges used to bring the dead to Abydos, the sacred city of Osiris, the place where the first kings of Egypt were buried, and where every pharaoh who has ever ruled has sought proximity to legitimacy. The canal smell is the smell of why this location was chosen. This is not just where Seti I decided to build. This is the place that makes a pharaoh permanent. The workforce here knows this. The relief cutters, the painters, the scribes. These are not the mass labour teams of the pyramid era. They are specialists selected from the best practitioners in Egypt, working on a project they understand will be studied for as long as Egypt exists. Some of them will leave evidence of that understanding in places the formal inscription program never intended. The outer hall is cooler than the desert you cross to reach it. Outside, 40 degrees. In here, the thick stone walls hold the temperature they stored before dawn. Not refreshed air, but preserved cold. The specific coolness of sealed limestone. Put your hand against the painted wall of the second hypostyle hall. The surface is slightly warm from the nearby lamps. The relief beneath the paint is sharp-edged. The line between the painted background and the raised figure is a physical step you can feel. What you are touching is sculpture that has been painted, not painting that has been applied. The distinction is in the hand. In the inner chapels, the completed ones, the southern ones, the work reaches a quality that will not be exceeded by any Egyptian artist for the next 1,000 years. The Chapel of Osiris. Walls in deep blue-green, the figures of the gods cut with a precision that makes earlier New Kingdom work look approximate by comparison. The god's body occupies its exact place in the composition, without any of the slight visual crowding that characterises less careful work. The colour is applied in clean flat fields without visible brushwork. The effect is less like painting, and more like the surfaces being coloured from within. Look up. The ceiling carries the astronomical chart of the Egyptian sky, stars and constellations arranged in the specific positions the Egyptian astronomical tradition records. The floor is polished white limestone that reflects the lamplight from below. The Chapel of Isis. The goddess's outstretched wings drawn with a specificity of feather and span that functions as accurate observation of a bird in flight. The individual primary feathers distinguishable, the leading edge sharp, the whole gesture captured at the exact moment of extension. This is not a symbol of a wing. It is a wing rendered in stone and paint by someone who had looked at actual wings with the attention of a person intending to reproduce what they saw. These are artists who have found the absolute peak of what their tradition can produce, and they know it. Some of them have left their names. In a section of corridor not intended for public view, high near the ceiling, behind a pillar where the formal decoration ends and bare stone begins, there are graffiti, short text scratched by members of the work crew, names, a prayer, a note about a family member. One reads, roughly, "I came to see the Temple of Menmatri, and it was like heaven." The man who carved that was not a visitor. He was on the construction crew working inside the building he was describing. He took a moment to record that the thing he was helping build was extraordinary. Artists do this when they know they are making something that will outlast them. Before you walk to the northwest wing, understand why this building is at Abydos and not somewhere else. 1 kilometre north of where you're standing in a low desert area called el-Ka'ab, the Mother of Pots, named for the ceramic sherds left by ancient visitors who came to honour the dead, are the oldest royal tombs in Egypt. The tombs of Narmer, of Horahar, of the First Dynasty kings who unified Egypt around 3100 BC and began the sequence that the scribes in the northwest wing are completing today. The first names in the Abydos king list are buried approximately a kilometre from the wall on which their cartouches appear. This is not coincidence. This is why Seti I chose Abydos for the definitive statement of Egyptian historical continuity. He's not just inscribing a list of kings, he's inscribing it in the city where the list began, where the earliest names on it were buried, where the ground itself carries the physical weight of the origins he is claiming. The theological logic is exact. The list starts here because history started here, and by building here, by inscribing here, Seti I is closing a loop that opened 3,000 years ago at the beginning of the written record. When you walk into the gallery of lists in a few minutes, you will be walking into a room that faces, across 1 kilometre of desert, the tomb of the man whose cartouche appears first in the sequence. The oldest name and the newest are connected by sand and intention. The gallery of lists is a long east-west corridor, narrower than the hypostyle halls, more intimate, the walls closer on both sides. A row of false windows cuts into the south wall at regular intervals, not windows that open but window-shaped niches that structure the light, each one creating a column of illumination that shifts its angle through the day. On the north wall, the list. Running right to left, the Egyptian direction, in 2 rows stacked above each other, each cartouche approximately 20 centimetres wide, about the width of a handspan. The royal names inside are hieroglyphic, each sign cut with the same fine chisel precision as the chapel reliefs. At this scale, standing close, the individual signs are readable. This is a text, not an image. Seti I appears at the far right, larger than the others, facing left toward his predecessors. Beside him, slightly smaller, facing left, his son, the 12-year-old heir performing the ritual of the ancestors, burning incense, carrying offerings in front of every king who came before. To read the list, you have to move. Start at the far right, at Seti I and his son, and walk left along the wall. Each cartouche is a name, and a reign, and a life. The oldest names at the far left end are from 1,800 years before this morning. The corridor is long enough that by the time you reach the beginning of the sequence, Seti I is behind you. The list begins with Menes, the first pharaoh who unified Egypt around 3100 BC. It runs through the Old Kingdom, through the pyramid builders, through the Middle Kingdom, through the great pharaohs of the New Kingdom. 76 cartouches, 18 centuries of continuous rule, recorded in the most sacred city in Egypt, on the most permanent surface available, carved and painted limestone in a sealed interior chapel. The list ends with Seti I. Now look at it more carefully. Move your eye along the sequence from Menes toward the present. Old Kingdom pharaohs, Middle Kingdom pharaohs. The 18th dynasty, Ahmose, Amenhotep I, Thutmose I, Thutmose II, Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, Thutmose IV, Amenhotep III, then Horemheb. Between Amenhotep III and Horemheb, there is no gap, no damaged stone, no trace of correction. The sequence reads as if the distance between those two names were a single ordinary step, not 17 years, not 5 pharaohs, not an entirely different religion that dismantled the temples where this list was eventually inscribed. Akhenaten is not here. Nefertiti, who ruled as pharaoh under the name Neferneferuaten, is not here. Tutankhamun is not here. I is not here. They are not acknowledged as missing. They are simply not there. The man who ordered this list was alive during the years it omits. Seti I came of age while the Amarna revolution was being dismantled. Through Tutankhamun's restoration, through I's brief reign, through Horemheb's systematic erasure. He served as a general under Horemheb. He watched the machinery of official forgetting work at close range. He is not a distant historian making decisions about events that happened before his time. He personally witnessed the 17 years that are not on this wall. What the Abydos king list does that no previous act of erasure had done is more absolute than chiseling. When you chisel a name off a monument, you leave a scar. The scar is evidence. The scar says, something was here. What the scribes at Abydos are doing is different. They are writing a continuous sequence in which the omissions do not read as absences. There is no scar to see. There is no trace of correction. The list moves from Amenhotep III to Horemheb like a river from one city to the next, and anyone reading it who didn't already know would have no reason to ask what came between. Understand the full scale of what Seti I is managing while these scribes work. He is fighting simultaneous campaigns in Canaan, re-establishing Egyptian control of the trade routes that deteriorated during the Amarna period's inward focus. He is in an ongoing strategic competition with the Hittite Empire that will eventually produce the Battle of Kadesh under his son. He is constructing his own tomb in the Valley of the Kings, KV-17, which will be the longest and deepest tomb ever cut in that valley. He is restoring damaged temples across Egypt that the Amarna period left to deteriorate, and he is building this, the most architecturally ambitious temple of the New Kingdom, on the most sacred ground in Egypt, containing the most politically precise historical inscription ever conceived. This is not the work of a man consolidating power cautiously. This is the work of a man who understands that Egypt after the Amarna revolution needs something specific, not just military restoration, not just economic recovery, but a permanent official statement about what Egypt is and always has been. The king list is that statement. The temple is its frame. I find myself returning to the specific quality of that decision. It is not rage or fear that produces this list. It is something more calculated. The understanding that a clean record is more durable than an erased one. Seti I is not angry at Akhenaten. He is building a structure in which Akhenaten does not exist as a category. The distinction matters. The pharaohs whose names are absent from this wall, the ones living in the gap between Amenhotep III and Horemheb, Their stories are in other videos on this channel. What their absence means for where we are standing today is on screen now if you want it. The structure beyond the Gallery of Lists is unlike anything else built in Egypt. Behind the temple, accessed through a descending corridor that runs 100 meters under the sand, is the Osiris, a structure built of granite blocks weighing up to 100 tons each, with no decoration, no inscription on its primary surfaces, a central island surrounded by a channel of water, the primordial mound of creation emerging from the waters of Nun. Seti I designed it as the symbolic tomb of Osiris, built to resonate with the massive, unadorned construction style of the Old Kingdom rather than the painted elegance of the New. When the first archaeologists excavated it in the early 20th century, they thought it was older than Seti I, Old Kingdom, possibly pre-dynastic, a structure millennia older than the temple above it. Its scale and style are so anomalous that the dating seemed impossible. Later analysis established it as Seti I's work, built to look ancient, designed to feel as if it had always been there. Seti I built something new that was meant to feel like it had never been built at all. After his death, the water table at Abydos rose permanently. The Osiris, designed to be flooded symbolically for ritual purposes, was flooded in fact by the groundwater of the Nile Valley rising over centuries. The central island still stands in real water today. The structure built to represent the moment before creation was eventually submerged by the conditions it was imagining. Seti I built a structure to represent the moment before creation. Creation arrived anyway. He will not finish this temple. He dies in approximately 1279 BC, 11 years from this morning. The north wing, currently being quarried, will be completed by Ramesses II. Visitors today can identify the exact point where Seti I's work ends and his son's work begins. Not by any inscription or marker, by the quality of the cutting. In Seti I's sections, the relief is cut to a consistent depth, the contour lines between figure and background maintaining a precision that reads as deliberate at every point. The faces have specific anatomy, the set of an eye, the specific weight of a jaw, a gesture of hand caught at a moment that feels observed rather than conventionalized. The paint in his sections is applied in even fields with no visible overlap at the edges, the transitions between colours sharp enough to have been measured rather than felt. The blue backgrounds in the Osiris chapel hold the same tone from floor to ceiling without the slight variations that occur when pigment is mixed in multiple batches. In Ramesses II's section, starting at a specific course of stone approximately 2/3 of the way along the north wing, the relief becomes shallower by a measurable degree. The contour lines waver slightly at corners. The faces move toward the conventional type rather than the specific individual. The paint transitions become slightly less exact. None of this is obvious to an untrained eye. To a trained one, it reads immediately. The father's hand, then the son's hand, visible in the wall. Ramesses II had more buildings to build. He would reign for 66 years. He would commission Abu Simbel and Ramessium and his own temple at Abydos, adjacent to his father's, and additions to Karnak so large they overwhelmed everything around them. He also replaced the cartouches of his predecessors on monuments he had not built with his own name, a practice so widespread that scholars still argue over which buildings Ramesses II actually commissioned versus which he simply claimed. The Temple of Seti I at Abydos is considered by Egyptologists today to contain the finest painted relief work in all of ancient Egypt. Ramesses II is 10 times more famous. Seti I wanted to be the king who restored Egypt to its proper continuity. He built the evidence. His son became the evidence of something else. In 1819, a young English artist and traveller named William John Banks visited the Gallery of Lists. He understood correctly that it was important. He arranged for a section of the wall, a panel showing Seti I and Ramesses II before a portion of the cartouches, to be removed and transported to England. The panel is in the British Museum today. Catalogue number EA117, Room 4, Egyptian sculpture. The king's face left, as on the original wall. The wall in Abydos has a scar. The list that was built to read as a seamless continuous sequence, built specifically to leave no trace of the names it omitted, now has a rectangular gap where Banks cut through it. The most calculated erasure in the ancient world and the most casual one are in the same wall today. The 5 pharaohs Seti I removed left no evidence of their removal. The section Banks removed is immediately visible. The list still reads. On either side of the gap, the sequence continues. Kings before, Seti I and his son after, the invisible emissions undisturbed by what banks took away. The list is still on that wall. You can visit it today. The Temple of Seti I at Abydos is in Middle Egypt, accessible from El Balyana on the west bank of the Nile. The site receives a fraction of the visitors that Luxor and the Valley of the Kings receive. Abydos is further from the tourist routes, less convenient, less advertised. The people who make the journey tend to be the ones who have read enough to know what is there. They walk into the gallery of lists and find the cartouches still sharp, the paint in the inner chapel still at a saturation that photographs cannot accurately reproduce, the false window niches still structuring the light the way Seti I's architects designed them to. The cartouches are still sharp. The 12-year-old boy is still there beside his father, facing the full weight of Egyptian history, burning incense before 76 names. In the inner chapels behind the gallery, the astronomical ceiling of the Osiris chapel still shows the stars. The wing of Isis is still exact. He does not know yet that he will outlive most of his own children. He does not know that his own reign, 66 years, the longest in the New Kingdom, will overshadow in fame everything his father built, including this. He is 12 years old, on the most sacred ground in Egypt, watching scribes inscribe a sequence that contains every legitimate king from Menes to his father. Every legitimate king, 76 names, and exactly 5 deliberate absences that will never be visible in this wall. Not in 33 centuries of visitors passing through this gallery, not until scholars studying other sources went looking for what was not there, and found the outline of what the smooth stone concealed. The last person in Egypt with direct Amarna blood watched her dynasty end 30 years before this morning. The letters she wrote to a foreign king, the ring that records her marriage, the disappearance that followed. That story is in the Akhenaten video on screen now. If you want to support this channel and help us keep finding stories like this one, membership is available. The link is in the description. It is not expensive and it makes a real difference. See you next time.